Howdy, how's it going? Welcome back, or howdy if you're new. This is the all-new ASUS Zephyrus G16 GA605, and this is the new secret weapon for both content creators and gamers alike. It has a super sleek all-aluminum chassis, and it's barely thicker than a thin crust pizza, so you can take this thing everywhere with you, and you won't have to worry about people trying to eat it. Well, they might try to steal it from you, but I can't help you there. The specs on this thing are absolutely mental as well, especially for a thin and lightweight laptop. And you guys know I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to audio and visual quality, so we're going to be diving a little deeper into those aspects as well, and I'll tell you if they meet my standards. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's jump in the time machine, go back a little bit so I can show you this thing getting unboxed, and then we'll go back a little bit forward, and then we'll show you all the specs and details a little bit further, and then we'll look at some benchmarks, and I'll give you my full summary at the end. Well, they package their stuff really well. They actually take care of their stuff. Same thing when I got my Ally, same thing when I bought all my motherboards. They package these things really well. Over here on this side, we've probably got our charger and any other accessories that come in the box. And right here, this little top layer pops off. Wow! So it's a box in a box in a box. This is boxception right here. What's inside the box? Ooh, look at this charger, yo. So I'm used to big honking bricks when it comes to laptops, and it looks like they've slimmed this down substantially. This is a 200 watt charger also, so we'll definitely have plenty of power to charge it pretty quickly, and on that side we have air. All right, so here's the pizza resistance. Let's open this beautiful thing up. The box, by the way, is like a smooth, soft material. It's not like any other box you would normally feel. It's, if you like textures, boy, you're in for a treat. Wow. Look at that beautiful thing right here. Look at all the venting on the bottom. Oh, look at that. So thin. This thing is so thin. Just to give you a comparison, here's my Lenovo Legion Slim 5 with the RTX 4060, and it does have a Ryzen 9 as well, but it's even slimmer than that. And look, this is a 14.5-inch laptop, and this is a 16-inch laptop, but the size is not that much different. So putting this thing in a bag is gonna be effortless. Oh man, that screen, look at that. This, and the weight of it, by the way, it's actually really lightweight. It's the most lightweight laptop. I actually think it's more, yeah, it's lighter than this Lenovo. I don't know how they made that possible, but hey, I'm here for it. Also inside of here, I don't know if we missed anything, but we do have some paperwork inside of here. So now that you've seen it unboxed, let's talk about the specs. This thing has the all-new Ryzen 9 HX 370, and that can boost up to 5.1 gigahertz. It does have 12 cores and 24 threads, and it does include the all-new AMD 890M iGPU as well, and an RTX 4070, which will do up to a 105 watt TDP. Now, this display, it is the best display spec I believe that you can get. This one is the 16-inch ROG Nebula display, and it's basically a 2.5K OLED, which is 2560 by 1600, and it does come equipped with a 240 Hz refresh rate, and it is HDR with 100% DCI-P3, 500 nits of brightness, Face of Display HDR True Black 500 certification, Dolby Vision, and a few other features like G-Sync Premium and more. And it is the end-all be-all of displays in my opinion. It's mind-blowingly good in every way possible. It also has VRR, and it works seamlessly to adjust the refresh rate with whatever FPS you're getting, so everything just feels like butter. It's very smooth and sleek, and the refresh rate is absolutely insane for FPS shooters, and it also is perfect for content creation as well. So you guys know I love my Call of Duty, and this thing is a monster on Call of Duty. And of course, I also edit my YouTube videos, and I've done it on here, and oh my gosh, it's absolutely insane. So when it comes to the memory, this one does have 32 gigs of LPDDR5X 7500 MHz onboard RAM. Unfortunately, is not upgradable, but there does come a little bit of a trade-off when it comes to soldered RAM. It's faster, it has lower latency, and it's a little bit more efficient as well. So just make sure that when you're looking at this laptop to get it with how much RAM you think you're going to need ahead of time. Now, as for storage, it does have a 1TB Gen 4 NVMe in this one, but you can get it with up to a 2TB, or you could just add some storage later. And it does have an additional 4x2 NVMe slot for extra storage, and it's very easy to upgrade as well. Now for I/O, we have a very modest array of ports. Over here on the left, we have a USB 4 port, and it supports DisplayPort 2.1 for the iGPU, and it will do 100 watts of power delivery. And we also have a USB Type A 3.2 Gen 2, and then we have a full-size HDMI, and of course we have the headphone microphone jack combo. And then right here is where you plug it in for the charger, and it is a 200 watt power brick. Now moving over to the right side, over here we have a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port that will do DisplayPort 1.4 coming directly from the NVIDIA dedicated GPU, and it also does support G-Sync as well. So if you're hooking it up to an external gaming monitor or an external display, you can actually do that through this one, and it will do 100 watts power delivery as well. And we have a Type A port, and it is also a 3.2 Type A. We also have an awesome SD Express 7.0 SD card slot, and this will be great for content creators to be able to transfer your footage directly off of your camera right onto here in blazing fast speeds. Now when it comes to Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi chip on this thing is awesome. It is the fastest Wi-Fi device I have used, hands down. It is Wi-Fi 7, and I'll show you some speed test right here. And then it also has Bluetooth 5.4, and the Bluetooth works well with external controllers, headsets. Everything feels super smooth and no latency as well. Now when it comes to audio, speaking of audio, you guys know I am an audiophile, and I'm going to tell you, you can rejoice ahead of time because it does get that CPPC tech stamp of approval. When it comes to audio, I really want bass, but I also don't want to sacrifice treble, so I want the best of both worlds, and this has it. This has very powerful woofers, real subwoofers built into it, and dedicated tweeters, so it's not just a little 2-speaker little rinky-dink thing. This thing is awesome. It even has Dolby Atmos, which gives you a wildly immersive audio experience. I'll even let you hear the audio here now. And you can see how high that thing gets up on the decibel reading. It's absolutely mental. You're going to love the audio on this thing no matter what you're doing, whether it's content creation, gaming, or just listening to music. This thing gets loud. Now, when it comes to the microphone, there are 3 modes, including cardioid, stereo, and omnidirectional. So from conference calls to streaming or just capturing a wider range of audio, it has you covered. Now, it does come equipped with the 2-way noise cancellation feature, and I did test it out, and it did actually work to help drown out some of that fan noise. Because as you know, laptops, they have fans. Your mic's kind of close to the fan, so you have to have that noise cancellation so your people watching you or listening to you don't get drowned out by those fans. This works really well. Now, also for content creators, whether you need to do a Zoom meeting or whether you're trying to stream on Twitch, it has you covered. So it has a 1080p IR supported camera, and it will do Windows Hello logins for quick and easy transitions in and out of your PC without having to type in those pesky passwords. Now, the other cool thing about this is it has a very powerful battery. It's a 90 watt hour battery in this small chassis. For them to squeeze in a 90 watt hour battery, that's extremely impressive. On the next video, I will show you some of my tips and tricks on taming this beast to get the best battery life and the best performance at the same time. But if you want to charge this thing too, by the way, it has a 200 watt power brick, and it can charge it in around an hour. Touching back on the unit itself, this is an amazing and sturdy and solid chassis. It is a CNC, premium CNC aluminum unibody, and it is extremely rigid, and I can't feel hardly any flex at all. It doesn't feel cheap, it doesn't feel wobbly, it's super solid. On the backside, there is the slash lighting, and you could change this to different effects inside Armory Crate. It even adds just a little bit more sleek and professional and kind of gamery look. I normally have this turned off, but you can turn it off, you can change it, you can dim it, you can do a lot in the armory crate with this, and it just adds a cool little effect. So people are in front of you and they're going to ask you, and you know, it's a good conversation starter. So it's pretty cool. Now, the other thing with the screen, the bezels on this thing are wildly thin. It has an 88.5% screen to body ratio, and that's actually really good for this type of display. That will definitely please anyone when it comes to bezels. I know bezels seem to bother people, but one thing that does bother me, but not in this, is the keyboard. If you are looking for an awesome keyboard, an awesome typing experience, this thing right here has you covered. This has an amazing mechanical feel to it, and it has 1.7 millimeters of travel, and it is just a beautiful and clean typing experience. It does not feel mushy. It doesn't have a bunch of flex like most laptops do. It's perfect. This thing was great. I was very pleased with this keyboard. The other thing that is really awesome about this device is the trackpad. It's huge. It matches the 16:10 aspect ratio of this screen perfectly, making editing a breeze, making working on photos a breeze, making gaming a breeze. No matter what you're going to use this thing for, it's going to feel super buttery smooth. The clicks are very nice and positive. You don't have to, you know, work around stuff. It just works. It works really, really well. I can assure you that. The other thing that was impressive is the weight. It's only 1.85 kilograms. That's only shy of 2.5 ROG Ally X's in your hand. Now, another thing when it comes to size and weight, this has a 2-inch bigger screen than the Lenovo Legion Slim 5 that I reviewed, and it only comes in at a few ounces more, about 3 ounces more, I believe, when it comes to weight, but it's actually thinner. So it's about 4 millimeters thinner than the Lenovo Legion Slim 5. So that's really impressive that they're able to pack all this in such a beautiful package. Now let's touch back on this display. Super crispy, super crazy, super deep, super bold, super vibrant, like absolutely a mental display. Your eyes won't believe it until you see it. I can't tell you how awesome this display is through YouTube. You probably won't be able to see it, but the viewing angles are absolutely awesome. And it is a glossy display. Some people like to have that anti-reflective coating, but that doesn't bother me. I'm usually in here or in the bedroom or in a moderated light room. I'm not gaming outdoors. So the glossy display, in my opinion, is better because you're going to get better quality. It looks smoother, it looks glossier. It's just beautiful. But this is the ROG Nebula display, and the name is fitting because this thing is straight out of a galaxy far, far away. You could toss some HDR content or an HDR game, sit back and be completely captivated and truly transported to a whole new galaxy. And this does set the new standard for ASUS. It simplifies the experience, and it simplifies some of the specs and the nomenclature. So if you're seeing that ROG Nebula display, you can know that you're getting the best of the best. And this one is the 2.5K OLED with a 240 hertz refresh rate. And I can assure you, when you see it, that's it. End all be all, end game screen right here. Just blew me away. Absolutely mental. Now it does have a mux switch, and basically a mux switch allows you to engage or disengage the internal GPU that's built onto the CPU and switch directly to that NVIDIA GPU. And this also does support the NVIDIA Advanced Optimus, which will bypass the need to reboot, because in most devices, if you want to switch from the iGPU to the dedicated GPU, you gotta reboot. But this, you don't. It's pretty cool. When it comes to graphics, this thing is extremely nice. With NVIDIA G-Sync, you can enjoy and experience no stuttering, no juddering, or even artifacts. It works perfectly well to match the refresh rate to the FPS, so it feels very smooth. Dolby Vision also is on here, and that will take the metadata from whatever you're watching or experiencing, and it'll optimize the brightness and the colors as well to give you an even better experience. Now, for content creators, you guys know it's crucial to have a well-calibrated and accurate display. And this has everything you need here. But some of the highlights are the VESA Display HDR True Black 500 certification, and that will give you the best lighting and the best blacks and the best HDR content that you could ever imagine. Now let's talk about the CPU again. This thing is the brand new Ryzen 9 HX 370, and I'm sure you really want to hear more about it. So here we go. This is the latest Zen 5 architecture. It has 50% more L3 cache than last generation, and the default TDP range, if you're wondering, is between 15 and 54 watts. And it does have a base clock of 2 gigahertz, but it will boost up to 5.1. Now this one does have the brand new Radeon 890M internal GPU built onto the chipset, and don't let an iGPU fool you. they have come a long way. This will boost up to 2.9 gigahertz. You can play Call of Duty, you can play Forza, you can do pretty much anything and everything you can do on your handheld, but a little bit more. We'll actually be comparing it in one of the next videos to the ROG Ally's 780M. And I think this is probably going to blow your mind, but stay tuned for that and we'll dive a little bit deeper as we go. I'll try to put it in this video, maybe one or two of the benchmarks, but more than likely to be in that next video. Now, let's talk about the cooling on this laptop. They have not one, not two, but 3 fans. Yes, 3, and 7 heat pipes. And they have put a ton of technology and design into this cooling system, and it's simply mind-blowing. You'll have to hear it to believe it. The fan noise on this thing is absolutely awesome. It's one of the most quiet gaming laptops, if not the most quiet gaming laptop that I've ever used. And I'll put a demo of how quiet it is right here. And you can look at the decibel meter and see that it is actually pretty dang quiet. And this thing even comes pre-equipped with liquid metal applied to the CPU, which does offer up to a 14% better thermal conductivity with up to 13 degrees Celsius lower temperature compared to thermal paste. Now, touching back on the battery, this thing is impressive. 90 watt hours. You can achieve some pretty impressive numbers, including 8 to 9 hours of web surfing and watching YouTube. And yes, I did achieve that. And you can easily get 2 to 3 hours of playing some of the most demanding games at the right settings. I will cover more with the battery and settings and trying to help people dial this in who are looking at buying this laptop. So this review, if you are looking for a little bit more in-depth settings and things, stay tuned for the next one. I will put a lot more in there on tuning it, setting it up, debloating it, all that good stuff. Now, let's dive into some benchmarks. I'm going to show you a few benchmarks that matter to me, and then at the end, I will give you my conclusion and tell you what I really think about this, completely unscripted, unbiased, just raw opinions and facts. And I will also show you some temperatures and some of the workarounds I found for these temps as well, because there is a few caveats when it comes to thin and lightweight laptops that you can work around really easily. So let's just dive right on in those. Now let's look at some benchmarks. We're going to cover both synthetic and gaming benchmarks, and we're also going to talk about some temperatures and fan noise along the way. But the first thing we're going to start off with is, of course, Cinebench R23. And this is a multi-core test that I have ran here, and I have ran it on all of the modes at the top that you can see. And this is within Armory Crate. You can choose which mode you would like to run. For example, Windows, Silent, Performance, Turbo, Manual, Manual plugged in, and Performance plugged in. These modes will give you a good idea of which one might cater to the needs that you are going to have, and you will need to kind of tinker around some of these settings to get the best bang for your buck, but I'll cover that in a later video. Some of the settings can be slightly overwhelming, but for the most part, I believe Performance or Turbo is going to suit most people's needs, whether it's plugged in or unplugged. But here we go. You can see at the top, the lowest score was in normal old Windows mode. There's a setting that actually says Windows mode, which is kind of funny. And then you will look at the highest score that we got, which was in manual plugged in, and that was 23,390. And I did have to tinker around with these settings a little bit in manual to kind of gear it more towards getting the best benchmark score possible for each benchmark. But like I said, we'll cover that in a later video. Now, the next benchmark we're going to run is a synthetic benchmark as well, but it combines CPU and GPU, and this is a very good representation of possibly a gaming workload, but in a synthetic mode. We're going to show you the TimeSpy overall score first, and then we'll jump into individual scores like the GPU score and the CPU score. So first of all, at the top, we have the Windows mode, and it got 7,458. And that is a good average representation, I would say, of what you should expect. But if you want to dial this thing up and get the most performance possible, you will have to go into that manual plugged in mode. Now we're going to look at TimeSpy on the GPU score by itself, and you can see clearly the winner once again is the manual plugged in, but close behind is the turbo mode. And then right above that, you can see the performance mode is still kicking butt, even though it is completely unplugged and running on battery power. Now let's take a look at the TimeSpy CPU scores. You can see all these numbers are very impressive and they're very close together. So it doesn't matter if you're going to use this thing plugged in or unplugged, you will be able to squeeze a lot of CPU performance out of any mode you like. Now let's talk about temperatures and fan noise. And for this particular test, I'm going to include a little bit of data that I would normally not include, and that is surface temperatures. Now for this test, I ran on my desk with it propped up just a few inches. That significantly lowers the temperatures. But if you are planning to run this on your lap or flat on a desk, these temperatures will vary a good bit. So just kind of keep that in mind, that your experience may vary a little bit depending on your situation. My best advice is with any gaming laptop, grab yourself a cooling pad with the little fans on it, because that will greatly drop your temperatures and make your laptop last a lot longer overall, because temperatures are the #1 killer of laptops in my opinion. All right, so let's go. Performance versus performance, but unplugged versus plugged in. Now both of these are using the NVIDIA GPU for this particular test in TimeSpy. Top temperature, when we're looking at the unplugged side, we got 42°C. On the plugged in side, get a good bit more power, but it raises the temps up about 5°C. On the bottom side, because it was raised up, we did not see as big of a jump, but if you are on a table without raising the back up, it will be a lot higher. Now when it comes to the CPU and GPU temps, they're about 10 to 13°C higher, but like I said, there's a significant rise in power and performance. And as far as fan noise goes, between unplugged and plugged in, really not a huge noticeable difference, about 4 decibels. It's just enough to notice, but in my opinion, I think you could raise these fan curves up if you want to go into manual mode, tune them, and they still will be more than reasonable. Now we're going to look at TimeSpy once again, and this is only focusing on the 890M performance versus the 890M Turbo. We do not have the NVIDIA GPU enabled for either one of these tests right here. Now keep in mind, the performance scores for TimeSpy for both overall CPU and GPU workloads are really within margin of error. I mean, they are really close on both unplugged and plugged in. So I really am not going to focus on those for this test, but what I will focus on is the temperature differences and the fan noise difference. There's about a 3°C difference between the two. You'll see the performance mode has a little bit higher temperatures, and that is simply because it is keeping those fan curves down a little bit lower to conserve power. So now let's compare the ROG Ally X with the 780M to the Zephyrus G16, only using the 890M. I have disabled the NVIDIA GPU for this, and as you can see at the top, we have the Ally X plugged in at 30-watt turbo, and then the G16 plugged in on turbo mode. You can see up here at the top, the overall score is a pretty good bit higher at 4035 versus 3534, and then down there below you'll see the GPU score. They are kind of close together, but you can still see that G16 still edging out quite a bit ahead. And now at the CPU score, you'll see this is where it really starts chugging a lot farther ahead. CPU is significantly faster. So the next game we're going to test is Modern Warfare 3. This is my absolute favorite game besides the new Black Ops, which I did get to play on here for a brief moment with the new beta, and it plays exceptionally well. This thing is a monster for Black Ops, and I can't wait till the full version comes out, because I will be doing so much more testing with Black Ops 6 to show you exactly how good this thing plays. And if they open up the beta again, then I'll definitely show you guys some more footage there too, so stay tuned for that. Alright, so now we're going to get a little bit of footage in game, and I'll try to see if you can hear or look at the fan noise over here, and the temps over here are sitting at about 72 currently, and they'll probably stay that, if not drop down, as we go throughout the game. You can actually hear my controller movements louder than the fan noise. That's how good the fan noise is on this thing. It's absolutely awesome for a high-end gaming laptop like this. So our GPU temp is sitting around 75 right now, getting about 140 FPS. And if I take this down to 1200p, by the way, so our fan noise is around 47, we're getting about 200 FPS, and we're about 76C on the GPU right here, and that's in 1200p. Now let's check out Cyberpunk 2077 plugged in on turbo. Alright, so here's the settings in here. We have, for full screen, we have 2560 by 1600, HDR mode. Let's go ahead and turn that on. We'll hit apply. Ooh, look at that. That color just changed completely. That looks way better. Telling you, HDR is a massive difference these days. I used to not really care too much about HDR, but when you have a game that actually supports HDR, it is a massive difference. The blacks get blacker, the colors get more vibrant. It just looks phenomenal and absolutely stunning. And your eyes will just have to see the difference for yourself. It's way worth it. All right, let's go ahead and get these fan noise profiles measured. So we had an average of about 45 decibels. That's just barely above what we had as our noise floor. These fans are phenomenal. They actually sound really good in my opinion. So for average FPS, we got 73 FPS for the average. Our 1% lows, our minimum was a 37.97. Max FPS was 90. And then we have over here our settings again, so you can see everything of how I have it set. If you want to try these benchmark settings at home, definitely feel free to do so. Now we're going to look at my second favorite title, which is Forza Horizon 5. This game is one of the most stunning racing games out there, besides Assetto Corsa with some mods, of course, but this thing out of the box just looks phenomenal. I've got it set at 1600p, all the settings dialed completely up, and even on battery power, we're still getting about 77 FPS, and then we're only sitting about 73C on the CPU and about 66C on the GPU. We're using about 23 watts for the CPU and about 42 watts on the GPU. And let's hear the fan noise. About 44 decibels. My talking voice is absolutely much more noticeable. And now we're going to look at Forza Horizon 5 plugged in on turbo. Now here's a better representation of where this laptop will shine. Is a game like Forza Horizon 5, you can turn the settings all the way up, ray tracing on high, everything just maxed out, and you can get every reflection detail, every single effect that you really want in a high-end laptop, and it just looks extremely good. I'm actually going to record gameplay footage directly onto this and overlay it, so as you hear me talk, you'll get a better representation of what you can expect. It's a little harder for me to get this to show on camera just because of the lighting and the reflections, and also just my camera limits me to 30 FPS, but I'll try to overlay that now so you can get a better representation of what you can expect. So let's talk about my final thoughts with this laptop and who's it for and does it get the CPPC tech stamp of approval. Well, first thing out of the way, let's just talk about price, because I'm sure you're wondering how much is the dang thing. Well, yeah, it does come in at $22.99. And before you click away, let me tell you, if you are a person with exquisite taste, you are an audiophile, you really want the best screen possible, and you want a feature-packed laptop that is not heavy, it's not thick, and it's gonna be very durable, this is the only option. Like, there's really no comparisons. Out of every laptop that I have checked out, it lacked in majority of the things that this does extremely well. Audio, screen quality, FPS, overall performance, feel, fit, and finish, really nice trackpad, really nice keyboard, tons of I/O. ASUS wins every time. But when you compare any of the other options, you might have to sacrifice the OLED. You'll definitely not get near as good of audio for sure. I cannot tell you another laptop that even compares to this when it comes to audio. Keyboard is another thing. If you're going to be doing a lot of typing, a lot of editing, a lot of work in Canva, Photoshop, DaVinci, this will really please you, because when you are moving the mouse around and you're typing, it feels so much like a desktop PC that you won't miss being away from your desktop PC. And this trackpad, it really is the GOAT. I absolutely love this thing. Screen wise, 240 Hertz. It has more than enough capabilities for your FPS shooters, any of your HDR games, HDR content, editing. It's extremely color accurate. It does it all. It is completely worth the price, in my opinion. Yes, there are cheaper laptops that have a Ryzen 9 and a 4070, but they're not going to include an OLED of this caliber or the audio or any of the other things mentioned. So I do give it the CPPC tech stamp of approval. So all of the pros out of the way, what are the cons? Well, We talked about it a little bit earlier, the temperatures. It's mostly for me the surface temperatures around in this area and on the bottom that get a little spicy. Now, the easiest way around that is to get a laptop cooler, but if you don't have a laptop cooler, you can 3D print some risers like these, or you could just simply buy some, shove a book under it. There's a ton of possibilities in order to get these temperatures down, and all it's doing is just giving it a little bit more airflow. The stock feet just simply sit a little too low in order to give you adequate airflow under it. But with that said, all laptops that I tested seem to suffer from the exact same thing. So it's nothing that you'll probably be new to, but it's something that I do need to mention. Now, when it comes to the surface temperatures, the top part will get around 50 degrees Celsius at the most, and that surface temperature will hurt if you touch it. Are you going to be touching this area? No, probably never while you're gaming and running at a workload like that. The bottom part, are you going to be gaming in the lap position with a gaming laptop like this? Probably not. And if you are, you just simply shouldn't, because there are intake vents on the bottom of all laptops that should be raised up in order to get airflow under there to cool it. Now, from time to time, even if you're not gaming, you might want to run some Photoshop or some editing work and it'll still get a little warm. But like I said, that's no different than anything else. The main difference is you'll probably feel it more with this being an aluminum chassis, so as it heats up, you might kind of feel it. But don't let that discourage you, because I think when it comes to the internal temperatures, they're quite safe. They're very well managed with the fan curves, and if you run it into the manual fan curve mode, turn them up, you can actually eliminate a lot of the surface temperatures being that warm, because it'll just be getting all of that air out there a little quicker. Unless you're willing to spend 4 or 5 grand, there's gonna be some sacrifices. And even at that level of 4 or 5 grand, you're gonna have a super chunky, super heavy laptop. The thicker you go, probably the better the cooling. So you've got a little bit of a give and take nature when it comes to high-end gaming laptops, and those expectations should always be known and talked about, and you should really find what matters to you the most, what scenarios you're going to use them in, and look for reviews that can tell you what their experience was, because there is no this is the best laptop end all be all, because this is as close as you can get to it, but there is still a caveat with it, and it's going to be those temperatures on the surface. Now for me, since I primarily play on a desk or a cooling pad, it doesn't bother me at all, and I don't notice the temperatures at all. I'm usually playing with a controller anyways. I'm not playing on keyboard and mouse, but even when I was, it was fine. It was totally fine. The other thing you could do to limit those temperatures is to set a frame rate cap, run in an eco mode or manual fan curve mode. That's really about it. There might be a possibility to do some cooling mods to this thing later down the road, but we'll cross that bridge later if we can. Well guys, I really appreciate you sticking around to the end. I want to give a huge shout out to the channel OG members. You guys are the GOAT. Thank you so much for all your loyal support and love, and a huge shout out to ASUS for sending this over for review. I did not get paid for this review. They did not have to approve this review. I read from my own words and my own heart, and this is all my opinions. I did write a script for it to kind of keep me on track, because there was so much information to talk about. So some of this stuff was scripted, but I wrote every word of it. I can guarantee you that. Now, when it comes to my reviews and my ethics, if someone sends me something for review and there's anything I don't like about it, I will talk about it, just like the temperatures, for example. This laptop does get a 9.8 out of 10 for me, and the only thing I will take a little bit off was those temps, because everything else, it didn't just do good, it did extremely good. And I really want to say thank you again to ASUS for allowing me to do the review on this laptop, and I want to say thank you for being patient on this. I wanted to make sure I ran everything through its paces properly, and then right when I got done with that, we just had a slew of things happen with my health, and I am just now getting back into the swing of things. And if you've been around on the channel, you already know, and I really appreciate you guys, and love you all so very much, and words cannot express how much each and every one of you mean to me. So look, guys, I know I've rambled enough. We're gonna do more things with this laptop. We're gonna run some more tests, run some more games, maybe even live stream from it. But until the next one, I hope all of you have a good afternoon, good evening, or good night.